Hey, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's Thursday, May 18th, the regular council meeting for the Township of Malahide. Before we begin the agenda, I'd like to welcome back Councillor Cerna. Happy to have you in the chambers.
Button. See, it's been a while, so I kind of get forgetful. If I may, I'd like to take this time to thank everybody during my recent scare. I guess I could call it that. I'd like to thank my colleagues, my constituents, my friends, neighbors, everybody who reached out with their care, concern, their prayers, their thoughtfulness. My family, especially my daughter, who was very, very caring, concerned. Don't know if I'd have got through without her and her just excellent care. It's really nice to know who is really, really on your side. Nice to still be here. And I didn't think I'd say this again, that it's nice to see everybody again. The neatest thing, and I said this to many people, that when this all happened, I was in a coma for a number of days. And the thing about that, the strange thing about that was the things that you experience and the things I saw, hard to differentiate what was fantasy and what was reality. And the things I saw were really, really, I guess, eye-opening. And I hope it all turns out like that. And yes, Adam, you were still here when I woke up out of the coma.
Good.
So it was kind of the best of times, the worst of times. But again, I'm glad to be here, glad to be a part of it. And if everything comes true, we're in good shape. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. We're very happy you're here as well. So proceeding with the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have two, Sparta Line Municipal Drain and McGinnis Drain 2023.
So noted. Thank you. Next is approval of our previous minutes. Can I have a mover? Want to read the resolution, please?
That the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May 4th, 2023 be adopted as printed and circulated.
Mover and seconder? Councillor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Widner. Any errors or omissions, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Next on the agenda is a public hearing. There you go. So on the agenda is next is a public hearing. And so the council will adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under section 45 of the Planning Act. Clerk Adams, may I have the resolution?
That the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Malahide be called to order at 7:34 PM and that Mayor Dominique Giguère be appointed chairperson for the Committee of Adjustment.
Mover and seconder? Councillor Lewis, Councillor Leach, all in favor? Carried. So the purpose of this hearing is to consider an application for minor variance as submitted by owner Donald Sproul relating to property at Malahide Concession 3, part lot 34, RP 11 R9131, part 1, municipality known as 53273 Calton Line. So we'll begin with Mr. Steele. you're here with us. Can you provide us with an overview of the application, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Before committee tonight is a minor variance application, property 53273 Calton Line. The subject lands contain an existing single detached dwelling and are bounded by agricultural lands to the west and south, residential property to the east, and Calton Line to the north. Based on information provided with the application, the accessory structure previously existed on the property before it was damaged by a fire, and so the applicant is proposing to replace the dwelling or the structure with a new, larger accessory structure. And so the application is seeking to permit an accessory structure with a floor area of 274.2 square meters, where the bylaw requires a maximum floor area of 150 square meters. When considering applications for minor variance, committee adjustment is required to consider it under 4 specific tests. The first is that the variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. While the official plans do not speak specifically to maximum floor area requirements, they do generally speak to guiding orderly and logical growth and development, as well as do permit the proposed accessory structure as a permitted use under both county and Malahide official plans. So the minor variance maintains the general intent and purpose of both the county and Malahide official plans. The second test requires the variance maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The intent of the maximum floor area requirement is to ensure that the accessory structures remain subordinate to the main use of property, in this case, the residential use. It is noted that the proposed enclosed portion of the structure is approximately 152 square meters, which is only slightly greater than the maximum 150 square meters required by the zoning bylaw. The remaining additional floor area is actually a covered carport along the north side, as well as covered walkway on the east side of the building. And so it's recommended that as part of the decision of the minor variance that the maximum floor area for the proposed enclosed and unenclosed portions be recognized as part of any approval. And while the proposed lot coverage or lot floor area would exceed the maximum requirements, the accessory structure would continue to remain subordinate to the main residential use, which the application is consistent with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. It is noted on table 1 of the report, the maximum height, this will allow to confirm should read that it is less than 6 meters, where it currently reads more than 6 meters, and confirm that the proposed height of the accessory structure would meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The third test is that the application is minor in nature, and this is usually considered based on evaluating the size and impact of the proposed variance from the zoning bylaw. It's known that the subject lands are larger than other lots located on the south side of Calton Line, and also that the proposed structure would be sited as far to the rear on the property as possible, away from existing dwellings on adjacent properties. And the proposed accessory structure would not impact adjacent landowners from using their properties for permitted uses, so the application can be considered minor in nature. And finally, the proposed development is desirable for the appropriate use of the subject property. And so the proposed variance would permit a previously existing structure to be replaced with a larger footprint, where the proposed increase is predominantly for covered areas along the north and east sides of the building. And the application can be considered desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property. Comments were received during the application circulation from Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, which has confirmed that they have no concerns with the proposed variance. And so staff are recommending that the application be approved, subject to typical conditions that building permit be issued within 2 years and be issued in accordance with drawings provided with the application. And that concludes my presentation. We have to take questions from members of the committee.
Thank you. Does the applicant or the agent, did you wish to provide any additional information or comment? No? All good? Clerk Adams, have there been any additional comments received from the circulated agencies or landowners not outlined in the summary?
No, there haven't been any additional comments received.
Anyone else in attendance wishing to make a comment? I'll get to committee members in 1 second. So no one else from the public in attendance wishing to make a comment? So do any committee members wish to make a comment or ask any questions regarding the application?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was just looking at the overhead pictures of stuff versus the drawing there. And Mr. Steele already said it. It's like it's basically replacing what was there. It's just got a bigger covered area. So it's very minor variance.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone in attendance for your input on the application. I'll not ask the committee. I will be asking the committee to make their decision on the application. Clerk Adams, can you read the resolution?
That report number DS 23-12 entitled Application Number D13 MV 02-23 of Donald and Cindy Sproul and affecting lands described as part of Lot 34 Concession 3 in the Township of Malahide and being 53-273 Colton Line be received, and that the Township of Malahide Committee of Adjustment approve application number D13 MV 02-23 to permit an increase in the maximum floor area for an accessory structure, and that the approval shall be subject to the following conditions. One, that the owner applicant obtain the necessary building permit within 2 years from the date of decision to the satisfaction of the chief building official, ensuring that the approval variance applies only to the proposed accessory structure as illustrated with the application. And number two, that the structure be constructed as per the details shown in the drawings as provided with the application, site location, and architectural detail to the satisfaction of the chief building official.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis, Counselor Glinski. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. So please be advised that a written notice of the decision will be forwarded to designated parties and that there's a 20-day appeal period. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment in respect of this application, you must submit a written request to the Committee of Adjustment. This will also entitle you to be advised of a possible local planning appeal tribunal hearing. Clerk Adams, can you please provide a resolution to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment hearing in order to reconvene the council meeting?
That the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Malahide be adjourned and the council meeting reconvene at 7:42 PM.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis, Counselor Leach, all in favor? Carried. Next on the agenda, we have a meeting to consider Sparta Line Municipal Drain number 3 and 4 relating to parts lots 6 and 7, concession 3, Township of Malahide. Mr. Spreet, you're presenting this consideration. Go ahead.
Yes, your worship. Tonight's meeting is the consideration of the Sparta Line 3 and 4 drains. These are new drains, so they came about as a result of a road, Township of Malahide Sparta Line, requiring drainage for their property, for their road allowance, and also Mr. Butters to the north required drainage for his property. So what we're proposing to do is construct 2 drains. One is the main drain number 3, which starts in the lands of Mr. Versteeg, runs through the lands of Mr. White, crossing Sparta Line, and just into the lands of Mr. Butters. And then we have a branch, drain number 4, that runs from Mr. White's lands to the road allowance to provide the road allowance drainage in that area. These drains are just west of the Sparta Line 1 and 2 drains that we've already recently gone through council, and I believe one is being constructed. Are there any questions, your worship?
Any questions? Doesn't look like it. We can proceed with the resolution then.
That the engineer's report for the Sparta Line Drain number 3 and number 4 be accepted, and that bylaw number 23-41 being a bylaw to provide for Sparta Line Drain number 3 and 4 drainage works be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Glinski, Counselor Leach, all in favor? That's carried.
That the Court of Revision for the Sparta Line Drain number 3 and 4 be scheduled to be held on June 15th, 2023 at 7:30 PM.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna, Counselor Lewis, all in favor? Carried.
And that the tenders for the construction of the Sparta Line Drain number 3 and 4 be requested for June 8th, 2023 at 11 AM.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna, Counselor Leach, all in favor? Carried. So that's it for this particular report. Thank you, Mr. Spreed.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. The next item on the agenda is another meeting to consider, this time the McGinnis Drain 2023 relating to parts of lots 20 to 22, concession 3 and 4, Township of Malahide. This time, Mr. Varikin, over to you.
Thank you, your worship. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So first off, Micah DeVos authored this report and apologizes that he could not be here, but I'm going to present this report tonight on his behalf. We're happy to present our report here on McGinnis Drain 2023. This is just south of Mount Salem, an existing municipal drain, open channel. In this situation, we had an existing culvert that had failed, so we were looking to make improvements and replace that culvert. And as part of our investigation, there has been an online pond constructed on this open channel. And so it was part of the request to address and look at its impacts to the water course here. So we've made examination of that and recommended that the control structure be dropped in spring months so that to ensure it's not impacting upstream drainage, and we're going to be replacing the culvert as requested. The estimated cost of this work is $29,100, which includes all administration and work. And if there's any questions, I would welcome them now.
Any questions from members of council? Doesn't look like we have any questions. Thank you. Clerk Adams, may I have the resolution then?
That the engineer's report for the McGinnis Drain 2023 be accepted, and that bylaw number 23-40 being a bylaw to provide for the McGinnis Drain 2023 drainage works be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted.
Mr. Varikin, can I ask you if this part of the process allows for input from members of the public or questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let them know that there's a couple people in attendance.
Okay, so we do have a couple people in attendance. So we'll just hold the resolution for a moment.
Just state your name.
Hi, my name is George Martel. I'm from 51174 Colton Mine. I'm just curious. I read this report. I've seen the map of where this McGinnis Drain comes from and runs to. My question is, why am I on the hook for some of this money? And that's pretty blunt, I guess, but I'd like to know why.
Yes, absolutely. Tonight's meeting is to talk about consideration of the drain, so the physical design aspects. The next meeting is to talk about cost and assessments, but I can give you hopefully a basic understanding here, and then you can decide whether you want to bring this matter before the quarter revision at the next meeting. Whenever work is done on a municipal drain, anybody who contributes water to it is assessed what's called outlet liability. Outlet liability is essentially responsibility for your water once it leaves your property. Your property has been considered to be part of the watershed, therefore contributing water to there. So for example, when this culvert is being replaced, because that culvert needs to be a larger size to accommodate the flow from your property, you are being assessed a portion of the cost, as is everybody else within the watershed. And like I said, if there's questions on that, I'd be happy to talk about that a little bit more thoroughly. If you want to give me a call at our office, I can talk with you that a little bit more thoroughly and go through the assessments. But if you want to discuss it further in front of council, the quarter revision, the following meeting is the appropriate meeting for that.
So just to clarify one thing you said, it's because my sump pump water basically runs into this. Is that correct?
It's not your sump pump water. It's any water that lands on your property. So it can be surface water would be the bulk of it in this situation. So when we have, say, a large rain event, water lands on your property, it will run off your property unless unless in the situation of the Craigsman's property where they have a pond, It might go to the pond before leaving the property, but it runs off your property onto either the storm sewers on Colton or overland to this channel, and then it makes its way through this water course.
So this McGinnis drain, is this underground or is this on surface?
The physical portion we are working on is an open channel on the
That's not
surface.
what I asked. The question I asked was, this McGinnis drain, is this a drain that's underneath the ground in a tile or is this on the surface?
It is both.
Okay, so I'm looking at this map. It's the highlighted gray area. Is that correct? It goes through everybody's property?
The portion of this report is the portion with stations on it. So there's stations on the plan shown at 1050 to 1850. So it's a more or less a dashed line, and then it shows a private pond internally on that system.
So where's your office then?
We're in London.
Okay, well, I'm gonna drive out to London. We'll have a little meeting. I'd like you to
Yep.
explain this to me because I have no municipal drain on my property, none. And about 5-6 years ago, I went through the same thing with the council and I had to pay $1,700 to put a drain tile in Derick's farmland, right through Mr. Derick's farm. And I tied my sump pump into that. And that's the only place the water runoff of my property goes is to that tile that's in Mr. Derick's property and goes north into a creek back there. Is that the same creek? Because if so, then this map is wrong.
It is the channel that goes through the direct property, correct? And then it becomes a tile in the direct property on the upper portion.
Okay,
If I may, your worship. If I may, your worship.
Yes, please. Mr. Lopez?
Mr. Martell is assessed on 2 drains. He's assessed on the JF O'Brien, as well as half his property goes into the JF O'Brien, and the other half is assessed into the McGinnis drain. Just to clarify. And for this particular drain, this particular McGinnis drain report, he's assessed for, I believe, $28.
The monetary value is besides that. It's the principle of the point. If the plan here is telling me that some of my water runoff of my property goes into this drain, I'd like to see where this water goes. It goes in, Mr. Lopez, you and I had this discussion several years back. Do you recall what year it was that we put that drain in Mr. Derick's property?
I believe it was 2017
17, yeah, 5 years ago.
or 18. I'm not 100% sure, but
Around
it
that
was around that time, yeah.
At which it still doesn't work properly because I still have water sitting on my property. So do we discuss this tonight or do I have to come back to another meeting to discuss further?
Mr. Burke? Yeah, go ahead with the clarifying the process further.
Yeah, if your point for consideration is that you are not physically within the watershed, that is a topic for tonight. If your claim is that your water is not making its way to this channel, that's something to discuss tonight. We have done both a LiDAR investigation of the watershed and looked at the historical watershed that's been assessed in the past. So this property has been assessed in the past since I don't remember the year of the old report here. Let me look here just in our report here to freshen up on the history. Since 91 at least, if not further back. The watershed, which is been clarified with what's called LiDAR. So it's light imaging detection radar. It flies over and takes elevations. Sometimes we do physical surveys on the ground to confirm watershed boundaries a little bit more precisely. However, typically when we're talking assessments of $28, we do not spend the time to send a staff member out there and verify that. We would rely on the LiDAR data to determine physical crowns. If council wishes for us to further investigate this with a physical survey on the ground, we could physically survey the property and confirm that there is a crown that breaks the watershed, meaning part of their property flows to the JF O'Brien and part of their property flows back to the McGinnis. However, they have not been assessed to the JF O'Brien, I would assume, for their full property. So if they are to be removed from the McGinnis drain, they should be assessed to the JF O'Brien because their water has to go somewhere. Physically, that water goes either off the front of their property or the rear of their property. But at the end of the day, it has to go somewheres. And we base this on the LiDAR data to date and also the historical assessments to both the JF O'Brien and the McGinnis drain. So if there is further, investigation required, it would be our recommendation that council recommends that we investigate that and refers this to the next council meeting. Or the other option is to proceed. And if there's costs, discussion about costs, that can be investigated at the next council meeting in Quarter Revision.
So my
Is
biggest
that
reason.
clear?
One moment, just one moment.
Sorry. I
Yeah.
apologize.
Was that clear? Was there any questions on what was explained there?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Director Sweetland if you wanted to comment on perhaps the need to survey further or not, and your suggestions, please.
Yes, through your worship, I wouldn't recommend sending an additional surveyor out there to the cost of which, then gets borne upon the entire watershed as well for the additional work, adding additional expense to everybody involved. That Mr. Regan's explained the process and the data that's been accumulated to make the decision. And there's been further points in the drain process to allow input up to this point as well that all would have been considered into the design to this point. So that would be my recommendation as well.
Go ahead. Did you want to
You just,
ask one more question?
yeah, it was just one thing. I'm still confused and maybe I wasn't paying attention properly, but again, this drawing that we have here, you're telling me that it's a surface drain, not a tile. Is that correct? And the reason why I'm asking is again, because my neighbors was sitting right beside me there. His sump pump doesn't work at all. My other neighbor, his sump pump doesn't work at all. And the guy across the road, his sump pump doesn't work at all. My sump pump, both my sump pumps in the winter months pump out 55,000 liters of water a day. 55,000. Every 20 seconds, both those pumps are pumping out 7 gallons. Let's do the math. That's what it comes out to in a 24-hour period. I like to know where that water is coming from. If I look at this map and you're telling me that it's a tile underneath my property, then it's broken. If it's surface water, then he should be pumping water and so should Steve. And so should Neil across the road. They're not. I pump that much water. And that's why I have such a hard time with this. I know it's only $23, but my hydro bill is huge. And I'm pumping water all the time. I'm pumping water right now. I just looked at it tonight before I came here. Minute and a half, both of them are pumping 7 gallons. That's 35 liters. That's where my problem is. That's where my issue is. And Mr. Lopez and I did this back in 2017, and they put the JF O'Brien drain in there to take the water from the backyard, from my sump pump, because it was going to my backyard. They kind of rectified it, but it's still not working. It still floods. So that's where my problem is. And that's why I'm here. It's not fixed. And then I see this come out in the mail. I didn't get it. It's only $23. Fine. But it's the principle of the point. I'm not fixed. And now I've got to fix somebody else's pond or culvert somewhere else, and I got to pay for it when mine's not even fixed. And that was my whole issue. And that's why I'm standing here.
Thank you.
And
Just to clarify, the enclosed portion of the McGinnis drain does not flow through your property. It's actually, it's two lots to the west. So it doesn't come anywhere near your property. The drain in the back is a sealed plastic pipe. So there is no water coming from either of these drains. It could be that you have high water table. We talked about that before. That's pretty common. I've seen that in lots of different places, but I'm not a geological engineer, so I can't comment on that.
I get that, Mr. Lopez, and you and I did discuss this, but then, and I let it be until I see this map, this drawing, and Mr. Spreet's office is the one that done this blueprint. And I look at the lines here, and that's why I'm asking for clarification. So I look at the legend, this legend shows the tile goes or drain goes right in the middle of my property.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Mr. Martell, that's a watershed limit. That's not the actual drain itself. That heavy line you see bisecting your property is just,
Yeah.
that's the break point where the water goes one way or the other. It's just an imaginary line. It's not an actual drain.
I have no
Yeah.
low spots. That's why I would like somebody to come out, and take a look at it. Mr. Lopez, if you want to come out, I'll make it a time with you, come take a look at it, explain it to me again. Somebody needs to explain to me. This is where I get upset. We
Yeah,
paid enough
Mr.
taxes already.
Mr. Martell, just to clarify a few things here. The portion we are working on is not the tile portion. If there are concerns about the tile portion working correctly, then you should be submitting a maintenance request to Bob here to investigate it. I don't know if there's been a history of investigation. Bob, maybe you could clarify if that tile has been inspected in the last 5 years to check its current like if it's functioning correctly at this time.
We did some inspection in 2017 at the road crossing, I believe, and it's not functioning at the best it could be. It's an older tile, as you know. You know, if at some point it needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced, and we can do that under Section 78 request. But until I receive that, we're just going to go, you know, carry on with the drain that we have there right now.
Yeah, no, that as Bob is saying there, and to clarify, this request is for downstream on the open channel portion. If there are requests specific to making improvements to the tile, the closed portion of the system, you should be submitting a request to the township. However, that will result in further costs. You will pay a portion towards that in a similar manner that's being completed on this. However, that's up to you to determine whether an improvement is, in your mind, is necessary or not.
If any landowners in that area, you know, feel that the drain is not working properly, or it could use some maintenance of the open portion that is in the direct field, you know, they're more than welcome to sign a request for maintenance to have that portion cleaned out and to have the pipe, you know, the pipe cambered and inspected. That's not that difficult to do.
Are you talking about the one that you guys installed 5 years ago?
No, that's a different drain. That's the one in the back. The one I'm talking about is the McGinnis drain, which like I said, runs, it comes up through your neighbors 2 doors down from you.
So
That shows up as that heavy line that kind of bisects Colton line there, goes through the Allen Colton line. You can just see the heavy line going up there and stops in the field behind your house.
So I'm going to suggest if Mr. Martel, what I'm hearing is that this particular proposed drainage work is actually triggered you to, you know, resurface, no pun intended, another issue where it sounds like there could be further discussions and perhaps a meeting with Mr. Lopez and considering perhaps an application for a maintenance request, but it sounds like the actual specific works that are on the agenda for consideration this evening, a bit of separate issue. So, but I think your concerns are totally legitimate and worth discussion, but perhaps outside of what is being considered this evening. Would that be fair?
Yes, ma'am, I understand. Yes, you're right. But
I'd be
in this
happy to
letter-
meet with you, Mr. Martel.
That's
Yes,
fine.
and if you'd like to discuss anything too with us, Mr. Martell, feel free to come into the office or phone, and that's no problem as well.
And I will discuss it further with them, and I apologize for
No,
getting inside, but this triggered it.
yep,
And I'm sitting going, I know it's only $25. I get it, but
Yeah.
it's the principle.
Yeah.
I already pay enough taxes. They're huge. I'm almost $6,000 in taxes. And I
We hear
get
you.
what? Garbage on Monday mornings.
we hear you.
That's
So
my whole point. That's why I'm here, because in the cover letter, it said any resident can attend this meeting if they have questions or concerns, whatever. And that's why I'm here,
absolutely.
just to show you that I do have a concern.
So we're glad you raised those
Great. Thank you
concerns.
very
And it
much.
sounds like we'll be able to follow up with our staff. So we'll follow up on that. Were there other questions from members of the public or comments? Doesn't look like it. So as far as the McGinnis drain is concerned, oh, sir,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Well, I'm with George. This was originally,
Excuse me, sir, can you state your name and address, please?
Grant Peterson, 51, what's your number again? 51156. Carlton line. this was all taken care of, the water drainage originally when the place was built, and it seems strange to be coming back and hitting us with the bills later on. I mean, isn't our taxes designated to deal with this? I'm the same point as George. I mean, it's only a couple of bucks, but still getting more tax money out of us, it seems a little bit odd.
So if I may address this, the municipal drains are not part of your tax your tax assessment. They are, you're a landowner in a watershed, a community of landowners that are assessed proportionally for the amount of land you own in the watershed. And any maintenance work done on the drain is invoiced depending on where on the drain the work is done. It's assessed to everybody upstream. So everybody upstream of the repair will pay a portion of, you know, any kind of cost that gets incurred for the drain. So it's not really part of your tax structure. It's more of a sort of a separate entity that's dealt with through the Drainage Act.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. So if there are
And
no,
If I might add,
yes, please.
it's unfortunate, you know, a lot of people don't realize that they're on municipal drains. They'll move to a location, you know, from somewhere else, and a lot of people don't really know the ins and outs of municipal drains. They buy a property and they're surprised when they get an invoice in the mail for a repair or an improvement. So, you know, I try to do my best to educate people when they call or, you know, inquire about a property within a municipal drain. And there's, as in Mr. Martell's case, there's a lot of properties that are assessed on more than one drain. There's properties that are assessed on 4 or 5 drains I've dealt with in the past here. So that's another thing to think about.
Yes, that's a good point. So, and if anyone has question or concern or is wondering, so do I have a municipal drain on my property? They're welcome to reach out to you, Mr. Lopez.
Absolutely, anytime. I get calls all the time from people, you know, wanting to know about drains and wanting to know how it affects them. So yeah, you can call me anytime.
Perfect. Thank you. So as far as this particular drain works to be considered this evening, if there are no other questions from members of council, do you want to read the resolution again, please?
That the engineer's report for the McGinnis Drain 2023 be accepted, and that bylaw 23-40 being a bylaw to provide for the McGinnis Drain 2023 drainage works be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Leach. Counselor Lewis. All in favor? And that's carried.
That the Court of Revision for the McGinnis Drain 2023 be scheduled to be held on June 15th, 2023 at 7:30 PM.
Mover and seconder. Did you have a question? I'll just do mover and seconder, and then we'll open it up for questions. Mover and seconder for the Court of Revision date. Counselor Wilson. Counselor Cerna. Questions or comments? Counselor Wilson.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I know that this was, I guess next time, could we have the maps that Mr. Martell was talking about? That would just sort of give us some, I'm sure it was with the package that maybe the first time it went through, but it's sort of not when we're going through the agenda. It's just not there, and I'm not sure where to go looking for them partway through, so.
So these maps, the report and the 2 drainage maps for each meeting to consider were a part of the email. So they're not a part of the agenda package, but they are sent with the email that you receive, the original email. Yeah.
So the initial email does come with several attachments, and yeah, sometimes it's easy to bypass those.
I looked at one, it's just when we're going through it now, if we go by and find it,
Yes, we'll have a, because I know we had to, the package was resent and perhaps that caused some confusion, but yes, and by all means, at any time, if you're missing anything, we'll make sure you're well equipped. That's a fair request. So we have a mover and seconder. If there are no further questions or comments, all in favor? And that's carried.
That the tenders for the construction of the McGinnis Drain 2023 be requested for June 8th, 2023 at 11 a.m.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna, Counselor Wilson. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Varigan.
Thank you, your worship. Have a good
Mr.
evening.
Martel. Mr. Martel, Mr. Peterson, thank you. You're welcome to stay. Have a nice evening. Next on the agenda, we do have a presentation from Mr. Hanlon of Food Cycle Science. Are you with us? Yes, looks like you are. Welcome.
Thank you, your worship. I'm just going to share my screen here and then I will get started. Okay, if everybody can see that, then I'll get started here. So I want to say good evening, your worship and counselors and members of staff. Thank you so much for having me on this evening. My name is Jacob Hanlon and I am the Municipal Program Coordinator at Food Cycle Science. And I'm here to discuss an exciting food waste diversion opportunity for the Township of Malahide. I'm going to go through a decent amount of information here in a short amount of time, so I ask that you stick with me and happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So to briefly go over who we are, Food Cycle Science is a Canadian company and we're based out of Ottawa and we're 100% focused on food waste diversion solutions. We do this using our innovative technology called the Food Cycler. Our in-home food recycler is sold direct to consumers through partnerships like Vitamix, but we also put them into schools and in school boards through some partnerships with not-for-profit organizations such as the Outdoor Learning Store and Eco Schools Canada. And then the reason I'm here is we also put them into municipalities through our Municipal Solutions division. So our municipal solutions help many small, rural, remote, as well as northern communities keep food waste out of their landfills. So we're currently working with 81 Canadian municipalities across 6 provinces and territories, from Nelson in British Columbia up to Hay River in the Northwest Territories, and then many communities here in Ontario who often face struggles with food waste management or where green bin programs aren't necessarily the best option for them. Not too far from you, we have programs running in Bruce County, as well as a program starting in Essex County through the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority. So to briefly go through the problem here, the problem with food waste is that it is avoidable. It accounts for a large portion of our household waste, sometimes a majority, and it's made up of mostly liquid, which is heavy and freezes in the wintertime. On top of that, food waste, when it ends up in the landfill, is responsible for generating harmful greenhouse gases. So all these factors make it so that food waste is a problem that has a strong municipal impact. So one of the impacts to municipalities is that since food waste makes up such a large portion of our waste stream, it is causing our landfills to fill up quickly. Operating a landfill is obviously quite costly, so we want to extend the lifespan for as long as possible. The environmental impact is that when organic waste is in the anaerobic environment of a landfill and it's compressed between tons and tons of garbage, it produces methane gas while it's breaking down, and this is many times more harmful than CO2. So to put that into perspective, taking 1 ton of food waste out of the waste stream is the equivalent to taking a car off the road for an entire year. In our communities, putting food waste in the garbage causes odors, which is obviously unpleasant for humans, but interesting for animals like bears and raccoons who like to go through our trash. So removing food waste from the garbage eliminates these issues and it reduces the overall volume in our waste stream. So this can save the township on any kind of hauling and disposal fees, can save space in the landfill, and then it can save residents on some hassle and any excess waste fees that they might face. Now, we often get asked, haven't we solved this problem already? And there are green bins, which are common in bigger cities and places with higher population densities and the right infrastructure. However, this can be cost prohibitive or operationally challenging to implement. Many people in your community might backyard compost, and while we do think this is a great solution, it's unfortunately not feasible for everybody. It's certainly not a year-round solution, and there's still the concern about animals getting into that backyard bin. And then finally, we can continue to do the easiest solution, which is landfilling organic waste, but the long-term impacts here are costly and harmful to the environment. So at Food Cycler, we proposed a different way to deal with our food waste, and this really focuses on making food waste really easy to deal with and right in our homes. So we've essentially built a small kitchen appliance. It's about the size of a bread machine, where you put in your food waste, and then this can include things like meat, poultry, fish, dairy, even some bones. And then you push a button, and in a matter of hours, you end up with a dry, sterile, odorless, and nutrient-rich soil amendment that comes out. The machine can be used anywhere that has a plug. Most people store it in their kitchen, in their basement, or even in a heated garage. And on average, the Food Cycler will process between 1 and 3 kilograms of food waste per cycle. Each cycle takes between 4 and 8 hours to complete and uses between 1 and 1.5 kilowatt hours of power, which is about the equivalent to having a computer plugged in for the same amount of time. And then that result is about a handful of dry, odorless soil amendment that can be used in gardening and an existing compost system, or it can even be given to a local farm or community garden. Now, we currently have 2 household solutions that are used by our residents within our municipal programs. So both machines are similar in size, about a cubic foot, but the one on the left there, the FC30, has a 2.5 liter bucket capacity, while the one on the right, the Eco 5, has a 5 liter capacity. So we recommend the Eco 5 for residents in larger households or who just typically create a lot more food waste, but we ultimately leave it up to the resident to decide which model they would like. And then I'll just emphasize here that in the cycle that takes less than 8 hours, there's about a 90% reduction in the weight and volume of food waste, and the end product is full of nutrients, so it's beneficial to soil health and plant growth. And so this byproduct that's created, it's completely dry, it's an inert biomass, and I just have listed here many of the beneficial uses that we've seen within our municipal programs. So most common, people will add it to their garden soil or to their backyard composter. But some of the more creative ideas that we've seen have been people dropping it off at local farms to help their local farmers, or in a community garden where the community can see the benefits from this program. So from an environmental standpoint, the Food Cycler is a net negative carbon solution. And what that means is, just like planting trees or using solar panels, when you use the Food Cycler to avoid bringing food waste to a landfill, you're avoiding more greenhouse gases in the process than you're creating. And the same can't necessarily be said for other municipal operations, such as waste facilities or waste and recycling collection services, which rely on putting a large fleet of emitting vehicles on the road. Now, one thing we've learned from working with our municipal partners is that residents are quite interested in being part of the solution. They want to try new things, they want some options, and they want their government to bring these things to their community. So with the Food Cycler, you get to bring something that's innovative and tangible to your residents, and they don't need to live in a big city to be able to divert their organics. We believe food waste diversion should be available for all Canadians, no matter where they live. And with the Food Cycler, we're reducing waste right at the source at that household level. So no pun intended, but we're focusing on that low-hanging fruit, as we like to call it, because since food waste accounts for such a large portion of our household waste, it's the single most impactful strategy to achieving any kind of diversion targets you might have, and really just reducing the volume of waste in the waste stream. So I mentioned earlier that we're working with many municipalities across Canada, and to date, we've completed pilot programs in over 40 municipalities and over 5,000 households. We found that the results have been overwhelmingly positive. We were able to achieve a significant amount of net new waste diversion. We have a generous user experience rating of 4.6 out of 5 stars, and a 98% participation rate from residents within the programs. Many municipalities have expanded their programs to more households within the community after that initial pilot program. In Nelson, British Columbia, for example, after completing 2 successful pilot programs, they're now putting a Food Cycler in every home of their city of about 11,000 people. So last summer, Food Cycle Science was selected as a finalist in Impact Canada's Food Waste Reduction Challenge. So this is a 3-part initiative from Agri-Food and Agriculture Canada, with the goal to reduce Canada's food waste. So as a finalist, we were awarded with a $400,000 prize, and we we're tasked with finding more Canadian municipalities as implementation partners. And we're using this funding to invest directly into these pilot programs at a heavily subsidized price. So these pilots are helping us move into the final stage of the challenge, which comes with a $1.5 million grand prize. And any future funding that we receive is going to continue to be used to invest into programs for Canadians, and any municipalities that partner with us will have the right of first refusal on any subsequent funding. Now, just to get into what the pilot program looks like here, it's typically a 12-week project. Residents will purchase a food cycler at the subsidized rate from their municipality, and they'll use the unit, track the number of cycles per week, and then at the end of the 12 weeks, residents get to keep their food cycler, and we ask them to complete a brief survey so that we can evaluate the program's success. And then we present these results back to you in a final report or a feasibility study. And then this data can be used to support future waste management decision-making or to accompany a recommendation for an expansion to the program. And we offer final report writing as well as grant application support writing as part of the program as well. Now, the funded pilots work based on the subsidy model here, where Food Cycle Science provides the initial discount, and then we add in the federal funding from Impact Canada, and this gets the price of each unit down by 50% compared to the retail price. So we then ask the municipality to subsidize the cost by $100 per household, and then the participating residents will choose which model best suits their household, and they'll contribute that remaining amount. And then after the 12-week pilot period, the food cycler is theirs to keep. And that municipal subsidy of 100 per household, that remains constant regardless of which unit the resident chooses. So we have some pilot size recommendations here. For a township of your size, we'd recommend the 100 household pilot program. And since the municipal subsidy is $100 per household, that would be a municipal investment of $10,000 plus shipping costs and HST. And these are recommendations based off of our experience. The minimum pilot size is 50 households, and we've started in places at 400 plus houses. It really just depends on your needs, your resident demand, and your budget. So we're happy to work to adapt this program that best meets those aspects of your township. And my last slide here before I wrap up, these are just some reasons that may resonate with you as you consider whether you should pilot with us. So the first is that you have the opportunity to trial this technology at a well below market rate and through a convenient procurement platform with Canoe. You'll also see immediate and impactful benefits such as waste diversion, lower disposal costs, and reduced greenhouse gas emissions. And you can provide your constituents with low-cost municipal services, all the while being a steward for the environment. So we'd like to welcome the Township of Malahide as a partner in this food waste challenge. We believe your community would be a great fit for the benefits of the program. Today, I'm kindly asking that you receive the presentation as information. If there is any interest in pursuing a partnership with us on a funded pilot program, I just ask that you refer this to a staff member for a report and recommendation. So your worship and councillors and staff, thank you so much for allowing me to present this to you tonight. I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have at this time, and I really appreciate your attention.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Very interesting. Questions or comments? Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it seems to be checking off a lot of boxes. Waste reduction, sending the trucks to the landfill isn't getting any cheaper, and I'm sure it's all done by weight. I guess one question I had on more of a practical end of things, how long do these units last?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So the smaller unit there that I showed, that has a 5 to 7 year lifespan, and the larger unit has a 7 to 10 year lifespan. Both of them within our programs come with a 1-year warranty. And in that time, it's our team that will help residents if they have any issues or troubleshoot or need a replacement or anything like that.
Other questions or comments? I'm curious, in rural areas, I know a lot of our residents have large backyards. They can dispose of food waste fairly easily. Have you done pilot projects in very rural areas and found like what would be the advantage to our residents?
Yeah, in most of our municipal partnerships, thank you for the question, yeah, your worship. In most of our partnerships where there is a rural aspect to the town, we have found that it's been a mix of both rural and kind of in the more urban areas that we found participation. We find that even though it is convenient in the larger properties to just throw it out in the woods, there are residents who they just haven't had the opportunity to use something like this before. It's obviously quite pricey at the retail level. So we found that, especially because within our programs, we'll typically put up a pre-survey where we can gauge resident demand. We can figure out how many residents are actually interested before going through and having a program get its approval. As much as it's been quite a traditional way to just, especially in the rural areas, throw your food waste out to the woods. We have found that participation has been quite positive from both urban and rural places.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, when these units, I guess if it comes out as dried compost soil sort of thing, it's gotta sort of heat up the stuff while it's mixing it up. Where does that, I guess, smell go to while it's doing that? Or I'm just not sure how that part of it works.
Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor. So essentially what the machines do is they heat, they grind, they dehydrate the food waste and turn it into a soil-like powdery form in the end. So obviously there's moisture coming out, there's odors that are associated with that. So each unit has a carbon filter inside. It's activated charcoal, and that filters out any smells. The machines are 100% odor-free when the food waste is being processed in there, and that's due to these carbon filters. That might stem the question of how often do they need to be changed? Is there any maintenance? So the filters usually last between 3 and 4 months, depending on usage. So about 3 to 4 filter changes a year. On average, the cost of that for residents is about $20 per filter change. And that can be, the filter changes can be accessed through us. We have an online platform that we share with residents within our programs where they can get filter changes direct.
Good question. Thank you. Anyone else? So as you suggested, we'll receive the presentation this evening, and we will be doing some public consultation as we figure out priorities and what is of interest to do through our strategic planning process. And so there'll be interesting, this could be in a part of the list of options that we ask our residents to consider. So this was timely, so thank you. And all the best with the phase 3 of the competition.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you as well, councillors and staff members, for your time, and have a great rest of the night and enjoy the upcoming long weekend.
You as well. Have a nice evening. Clerk Adams.
That the presentation of Jacob Hanlon of Food Cycle Science be received.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Cerna, Councillor Wilson, all in favor? Carried. Next on the agenda is Director of Public Works. We have a few reports for us, starting with the capital programming change of scope. Director Sweetland.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so essentially this first report details a change in capital programming that may be required, which has surfaced due to how we have been relying on third-party report integration with our asset management and capital planning. So as it stands now, the road needs study advises on when various projects are required, which are then included in the long-term capital plan. So this is a new budget cycle. So once the projects were placed, we started with the engineering designs for the reconstruction projects. So this year we have the double surface treatment projects for capital programming on College Line and Carter Road. So relying on the road needs study, those roads would simply be resurfaced as is. So that planning doesn't align with best management practice, where we consider the whole road project, including widening and culvert replacements, utility relocations, those sorts of activities. So essentially the budget provided from the road needs study doesn't include the costing for this best management practice, which leaves us short on available funding to undertake the planned work that are described in the staff report. So staff have reviewed various options available to come up with a suitable undertaking. we are recommending option one in the report, which stays within budget, but at a reduced scope of work by only undertaking the work on College Line from Rogers Road to Imperial Road this year. So option two notes an additional $280,000 required to complete the entire College Line program. And option three notes an additional $541,000 required to complete the entire intended program. So this option one's recommended as this section of College Line is the priority section advised by the road needs study. And the deferral of the other works will allow the appropriate long-term budgeting practice and appropriate scope preparation. So now that the 10-year budget has been prepared, this issue can be avoided in the future by allowing more forward-looking practice. So essentially, we can design the projects now or in years in advance to understand the true recommended infrastructure renewal undertaking for those projects. So I'll leave it there for any questions that council may have. Happy to try to answer.
Thank you for that. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Whitner?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. To you, to Matt. And I do agree with the making the roads wider because we're seeing, I know I called you today, we're seeing a lot of roads breaking up that shouldn't be breaking up. But they're just not wide enough to get the base proper. So I think making this wider will make it better for farm machinery to be able to get over and just make it safer for everybody. So I guess it'll be a pilot project to see how well it stands out. But that's an old road. It's 20 years old. It's done pretty well, but I did notice Springwater and Wilson were really busting up. So anyway, good luck with this. Thank you.
And I want to clarify if anyone watching online, there was an addendum put on the website that in addition to the agenda package for this report. Any other questions or comments? Looks like we don't have any more questions. So thank you for that kind of reshuffling of projects and working within our means and the budget that we allocated this year. So that sounds like a really effective idea. So the resolution that's being proposed then, Clerk Adams?
That report number PW 23-28 entitled Capital Programming Change of Scope be received and that staff defer reconstruction of College Line from Springwater Road to Rogers Road and Chalet Line from Carter Road to East Limit to 2024 and proceed with reconstruction of College Line from Rogers Road to Imperial Road in 2023.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna, Counselor Lewis, all in favor? Carried. Next on the agenda is the Copenhagen Park landscaping.
Yes, through your worship. This is a follow-up report stemming from July of last year, and staff were directed to proceed with contracted landscape design for the park around the Storm Pond in Copenhagen. So a number of iterations were provided to include comments provided from the public input session last year, and also respect the use of the pond to allow proper maintenance and clean out as required. So the recommended option is number 2, included in the staff report, which respects the available capital budget and allows for appropriate tree species to be placed. So no walking path is included with this option, which was a preference from the community consultation phase. And the building of that of the walking path also resulted in the budget exceedance with little landscaping to be done. So that's we had a number of iterations with the consultant, and staff agree with the option 2 that's in the package. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Counselor Leach.
Through you, your worship. So the option number 2 is very pretty, but what is the long-term maintenance costs for that? Because I know with any expanded gardening, there's always more detailed weeding that needs to be done. Otherwise, it just isn't pretty anymore.
Yes, so through your worship, we haven't assessed the long-term maintenance cost for this particular park. This one stemmed from the development of that subdivision. We had discussed the cash in lieu of park land at the last meeting. So this park was intended to be included in the subdivision, and the township is the one undertaking the work from the capital funds for this. So at any rate, there is a park design for this space. So it could have been completed in the past. In the future, that either way that we would have ended up with the park and some maintenance activity happening for that subdivision.
Counselor Leach, follow up.
How is mosquito maintenance for that particular pond? Because it looked from seeing it, it looked kind of scudgy, should I say anything else? But you know, how do we maintain a safe space so we don't have to worry about mosquito-borne illnesses?
Right, that's a very good question. So this pond is part of the municipal drain for the subdivision. And I guess in urban centers, there are Ministry of Environment storm sewers that are paid for through the tax base. We have municipal drains here paid for the subdivision has its own drainage system being part of the pond. So if there's an improvement request from the benefiting landowners for that pond, they can make that to consider those types of items. Right now, it's a wet pond design, so it's to maintain a certain water level elevation in there. There are dry ponds that are designed for infiltration, wet ponds for quality control of the runoff. So that is an issue with wet ponds. When you have standing water, you have mosquitoes, but there's alternate considerations that can be made on any municipal drain for enhanced features, but it's also paid for by the benefiting landowners there.
And to date, it's not a problem that's been conveyed by the community. Okay, right. Any further questions or comments? The resolution, Clerk Adams, please.
That report number PW 23-35 entitled Copenhagen Park Landscaping be received, and that staff recommend council adopt design option number 2 for landscaping works at the Dixie Estates Stormwater Management Pond, and that staff be directed to solicit quotations for the landscaping build-out.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna. Counselor Leach, all in favor? Carried. The next report, still from Director Sweetland, tender award for the fleet vehicles.
Yes, through your worship, this is a tender award report for procurement of 3 vehicles directed through to tender by the Equipment Committee. The rationale for which are all provided in the April 20th agenda. So staff recommendation herein is to award the 3 vehicles to Elgin Chrysler. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Matt. It's amazing we put out 43 and we got 2, but that's the tender process. That's part of the fun. I think the prices are fair. I ran them last night and they're certainly in range, so that's what the tender is, and we're getting fuel efficient vehicles for the 2 of them, so that also will be a payback for us, so thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, resolution.
That report number PW 23-33 entitled Tender Award Fleet Vehicles be received, and that the bid received from Elgin Chrysler of St. Thomas in the amount of $99,588 plus applicable taxes and licensing for the purchase of 2 new half-ton pickup trucks be accepted, and that the bid received from Elgin Chrysler of St. Thomas in the amount of $67,105 plus applicable taxes and licensing for the purchase of 1 new 3/4 ton pickup truck be accepted, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into an agreement with Elgin Chrysler of St. Thomas, Ontario for the supply of the above noted new half-ton pickup trucks, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into an agreement with Elgin Chrysler of St. Thomas for the supply of the above noted 3/4 ton pickup truck.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Widner, all in favor? Carried. Okay, next on the agenda, spoiler alert, might be the last report from Director Sweetland. We'll get back to that. We're sad about that, but we'll deal with Temperance Line first. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. In this last report, it's a follow-up report requested by council following direction to mill and grade Temperance Line. So essentially, the direction that was given allows safe travel on Temperance Line while other service levels can be considered. the Temperance line was only recently advised to be a township road, so staff had made the recommendation to make it safe by milling and grading and compacting and then add into the road network asset inventory for long-term planning. So if alternate direction is requested in the report, I believe the clerk can confirm and understand a motion of 2/3 vote would be required to change the direction given to staff. So as this follow-up report was prepared, staff have currently held off on any undertaking on Temperance line awaiting further direction. I can answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Leach.
Your worship. So the images you sent around this afternoon via email for the compacted asphalt, that's significantly less dust developing than standard gravel. And its compaction is quite firm once that's been undertaken. So it's a midway between gravel and tar and chip, essentially.
Through your worship, yes, there's less dust involved with the tar and chip or surface treatment. There is an asphalt slurry that's provided to provide additional compaction, and then the granulars embed into that slurry more and more over time as more traffic goes over it. So the way that the resolution was passed, we'll mill it, and it will continue to compact with the gravel or the reclaimed asphalt, and over time it's a little bit less dusty, and that's the way. It wouldn't be a like for like with a gravel road, but it would still be classified as gravel road.
Thank you.
So technically classified as a gravel road, but not necessarily the A classification that we have in other places in the township. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Matt. Are we gonna be rolling this after? Just packing it? I don't see a problem at all with it. My own driveway, I made one last year and it packs tight. There's no dust to it. And there's thousands of these driveways around the area. So for all the traffic on that road, it should stand up. And one of the neighbors did approach me. He said that would be all he would do to it because there's not enough cars to warrant it, but it should be fine. It should make it a really pretty good road. So as long as we're rolling it, so it should be good. Oh, well.
Okay, and if I recall, the initial concern that brought this back for just a follow-up report and clarification was about concerns from residents, I believe, who perhaps felt like it was going to look and feel like other gravel roads, that especially until the brine was applied just recently, I can agree, it can be very dusty. So is there an interest from council at this stage, now that we've had a chance to clarify exactly what the final product will be? Is there a wish or interest to reconsider at all? Or do we proceed as initially directed? Councillor Glinski.
Get rid of that, get rid of that. Okay, green alone now. Madam Mayor, when would we be looking at the recycled asphalt being covered with some kind of hard top?
Director Sweetland.
Yeah, through your worship, that can be at the direction of council at any time. We have the biannual asset management updates that there are a number of roads in the township that would be candidates for gravel conversion projects, all subject to funding and priority levels. So at any time that could be bumped up in the list or added as a capital project as council would desire.
So this process will officially re-enter it in the asset management planning, and then decisions, more long-term decision can be made at that point. So So I'm not seeing a lot of interest for reconsideration. It sounds like we can proceed as initially directed. So if that's the case, we'll go for the resolution to receive the follow-up report, please.
That report number PW 23-34 entitled Temperance Line 2023 Maintenance Reconsideration be received.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna. Deputy Mayor Widner, all in favor. And that's carried. So that wasn't so bad, Director Sweetland, for your last report. So what I was alluding to is that Mr. Sweetland is moving on to Ingersoll. So congratulations on your new position. But I definitely want to say a big thank you for everything that you brought to the township and new standards and obviously as a director of public works, keyword being public, it's not an easy position. It's very public facing and you receive a lot of input. I certainly have appreciated your patience and your willingness to answer questions multiple times, including when we're trying to figure out what the temperance line is going to look like. I think that was a perfect example of your willingness to help us and help everybody understand what is a very technical area, but also something that everybody touches and sees and feels every day. So thank you so much. And I don't know if anybody else wanted to share anything, but I can say that we will miss you, but we really wish you all the best. We know you're not too far. Okay, so we'll move on to Director of Corporate Services, Treasurer, Mr. Boylan, you're online.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great.
Your first report is regarding 2022 tax-supported budget performance. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is to essentially debrief council on the outcome of the township's 2022 tax-supported budget. So throughout the year, staff do monitor year-to-date spending against their approved budget lines. And at the end of the year, we add up all the township spending and compare it to the township's approved budget to determine if there are surplus funds, which may be allocated to reserves, or conversely, if there is a deficit that requires funding from our reserves. So I know that I have received a couple of comments from council already throughout the year, kind of wondering what happens to unspent funds and what happens if we go over on a budget. So this is the process that allocates that excess funding or funds from the reserves at the end of the year. Going into the details of the report, the township generated an overall surplus of $62,896, which was a 0.8% under expenditure from the approved budget. Of this amount, $71,196 is an unrestricted surplus. So that means it can be directed to a reserve of council's choosing. I have recommended that council distribute the surplus to the capital reserve due to the number of over expenditures we've seen on our tender results so far in 2023. We also have a $38,196 building permit surplus. This must be directed to our building stabilization reserve fund to oblige Building Code Act requirements. And finally, we have a funding deficit of $46,496 in relation to county road work. So I had mentioned this during the 2023 budget deliberations that we had overspent on our county road funding. The county road funding had not kept up with our expenditures during the year, and now we're in a negative balance on our county road reserve at the end of 2022. So the report itself explains the major sources of variances. If council wants me to speak to any of them in greater detail, I'll do my best to oblige. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, clarification, comments? Councillor Glinski.
Madam Mayor, is there an accounting with the county at the end of the year to make up shortfalls, or are we kind of stuck with whatever we received from them earlier? And if we have a shortfall, that's our cross to bear. Thank you.
And that's in regards to the road agreement and yeah. Mr. Boylan?
Yeah, so the county road maintenance funding is designed as such that when we underspend the amount we receive in a year, it can be retained in a reserve, and when we overspend, we draw from a reserve. We've been in a deficit position before on our county road reserve. It's been a while. I think it's been since 2019 since the reserve's been in a deficit, but it has been in a deficit before. Normally what you hope happens is you have a light winter and then we don't spend as much of our county road funding, and then it builds our reserve back up. It seems to be kind of cyclical. If the funding arrangement's well designed, you'll see those ups and downs in the reserves, but over time it made more or less nets out.
Right, yeah, so when you take the long range view, it balances out so far, and it is an agreement, I think, that is maybe under review, and there's some further tweaking always needed, but yeah, I think so far it's been working. Further comments or questions? Yeah, excellent report. It was very clear. Thank you. So seeing no further questions, the resolution, Clerk Adams.
The report number FIN 23-12 entitled 2022 Tax Supported Budget Performance be received, and that the township's 2022 tax supported operating surplus of 71,196 be transferred to the capital reserve, and that the township's 2022 building permit surplus of 38,196 be transferred to the building stabilization reserve fund, and that the township's 2022 county roads deficit of 46,496 be funded through a transfer from the capital roads reserve.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Leach, Counselor Wilson, all in favor? Carried. Moving on to the next report on the building stabilization reserve fund. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is really similar to the last one. This report satisfies the township's requirement under the Building Code Act to report on its building stabilization reserve fund, for which council just approved a transfer. The township's building services are fully funded through building permit fees. When these fees, when the amount of revenue from these fees exceed our costs to actually perform services under the Building Code Act during a year, we have to transfer that surplus to a reserve and then report on it to council every 12 months. So for 2022, we have a surplus of $38,196. As I stated, this surplus brings the total in our building stabilization reserve fund to a balance of $637,577. I do mention in my report that the township seeks to maintain 2 years worth of building service operations for contingencies and economic downturn, and our current reserve balance does exceed that target. Staff are currently reviewing the township's building permit fees and will bring forward options for council's consideration later this year, but I am happy to discuss that process a little bit now if council wishes, or entertain any other questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Not seeing anything, but yeah, I think we'll look forward to your recommendations on how to deal with the reserve moving forward, and perhaps, yeah, making building permits even more accessible. The resolution then.
The report number FIN 23-11 titled Building Stabilization Reserve Fund be received.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna, Counselor Wilson, all in favor? Carried. The next report, 2022 Water and Sewer Budget Performance.
Thank you. So finally, this report is to debrief council on the outcome of the 2022 water and sewer budgets. So for water, we had a deficit of $117,554 for the year. This was due to underestimates of water consumption, which is never an exact science, water loss and system repairs. The report notes that we're estimating a portion of the deficit relates to a larger leak that we had on Hacienda early in 2022. Conversely, our sewer system generated a $10,567 surplus with really nothing of significance to note to council. As council knows, our water and sewer systems are fully funded by their respective user fees. So the recommendations I brought in this report are to fund the water deficit using our water reserve, which is comprised of past water billing revenue, And that we transfer our 2022 sewer surplus to the sewer reserve, which is restricted to be used against only against future sewer related costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Counselor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I guess, is there any mitigation moving forward to see if we can spot those leaks when it's that much water coming out? I saw that it was on that particular section isn't hooked up to the electronic surveillance part. I'm not sure how much the SCADA system would cost to install, but it might offset $68,000 worth.
Any comments on that? On a bit more technical? Oh, Director Sweetland, sorry.
Yes, through your worship. So the MOE guidelines try to keep us within 15% water loss. So the data in here is about 12% water loss. And that wouldn't be, I'd say, completely accurate because there are a number of factors that play into that number based on our meter reading dates and the boundary meter reading dates corresponding. So that number on a smaller system can wildly offset based on 1 or 2 days between the data collection. Ultimately, for leak detection, SCADA is the way to go. It wouldn't pinpoint a location, but then we can notice that excess flows are coming or erroneous flows are coming at some point or another at different areas. It's a significant cost to add new PLCs to the systems and integrate it with everything, but we're always looking to optimize and recommend various locations for that collection. That section not being on SCADA wouldn't necessarily mean that that's where a lot of the water loss is coming from. There's other forms of loss from breaks to small leaks in couplings to unreadable meters that we estimate and then time of read. So there's a lot of things that we're always seeking to minimize water loss, but ultimately, yes, SCADA is the way to go. That we're looking to, if there's an area that would benefit from it, staff would bring that forward as in a capital plan for sure.
Thank you. Counselor Glinski?
Madam Mayor, just exactly where are we talking about? Because I was under the impression that we had SCADA pretty well in all areas. And here it appears that we don't, but I thought that was looked after years ago.
Director Sweetland?
Yes, through your worship, there's multiple SCADA sites that the township has that's integrated with the water system and the sewer system for the township infrastructure, the secondary boards infrastructure. It's located throughout the township, but then there's also more iterative solutions that can be brought forward. So it's at boundary points, and then there can also be intermediate points where you can have SCADA everywhere at a significant cost at further junctions. So if there's pipes that go in multiple directions, and then you can't hit everything except for those boundary meters. If you get it on intermediate points, then you get better data to find the locations. So there's plenty of SCADA that could be added, but at that expense, I don't know if we're still within the recommended water loss boundaries. So until we were at risk of exceeding those boundaries, I wouldn't recommend implementing further SCADA integration at this time.
Thank you. Counselor Leach?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So what is the best way to mitigate such a deficit?
Yes, through your worship, we're always seeking, water losses is a big one. We're always seeking to find them. It's a very difficult process to find some of these leaks. We've had some recently where there's a suspected leak location because you can see it coming up from the ground. You dig, you test and find that water has chlorine in it. So you know it's not groundwater. But then where it's coming from, it finds a vein through the subsurface, and we can spend a long time trying to find a leak, or you cover it back up and wait for it to get worse. And then you can find it better. You can put a lot of money into finding leaks. So that's why the ministry has those recommended guidelines. So if you're within the boundaries, you seek to find them when you can, how much investment you put into finding those leaks. Once you're at risk of exceeding those parameters and you have large leaks and larger losses exceeding that 15%, then be time to take a next step in advance.
Director Boylan, did you want to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in this instance, the deficit has kind of been taken care of already because we had a really good tender result on our Highway 3 water main project. So we went under enough on that project that it does take care of the deficit that we had in 2022 anyway. But to speak at a high level about avoiding deficits in general, like we could take a more conservative approach through the budget process, which maybe is appropriate in this instance, given our water reserve is so low. Taking a more conservative budgeting approach will equate to higher rates though. So that normally you try and get it bang on, but estimating water consumption, yeah, it can come down to weather patterns. Like it's never a perfect science, like I said. So we just kind of estimate our best and try and bring forward a realistic estimate and hope for the best. This year it wasn't great, but next year we can hope for better.
Thank you to you both.
There are no further questions or comments. Thank you for those reports. The resolution.
The report number FIN 23-13 entitled 2022 Water and Sewer Budget Performance be received, and that the township's 2022 water rate funded operating deficit of 117,554 be funded from the water reserve, and that the township's 2022 sewer rate funded operating surplus of 10,567 be transferred to the sewer reserve.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Wilson, Deputy Mayor Widner, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Boylan. Next, building and planning bylaw, is Mr. Steele back with us?
Yes, your worship.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Before council tonight is a consent application for the purpose of severing a farm parcel located at 15217 Imperial Road. The subject property is approximately 82.3 hectares in size and currently contains a dairy operation, a single detached dwelling, as well as several accessory structures. And so the property is bisected by the Kettle Creek Municipal Drain that runs east-west across the property. Based on the information provided with the application, the owners are proposing to sever approximately 28 hectares of land on the south side of the municipal drain from the retained parcel to the north. And the severed lands would contain the existing dairy operation as well as an existing dwelling. The proposed retained parcel is approximately 52 hectares in size and was currently vacant, used for agricultural crop production. Provincial policy statement as well as county and Malahide official plans contain criteria that consent applications need to meet for agricultural services. And these include providing that the lot service size is appropriate for the type of agriculture uses proposed. They're common in the area and are of a suitable size to ensure flexibility of future changes to agricultural operations, compliance with NDS Formula 1, as well as ensuring that both parcels are viable agricultural units. The owners proposing to sever the subject lands along the municipal drain, as opposed to simply dividing the parcel in half, as there is no access currently over the existing drain. Additionally, the application information notes that including all the lands on the north side of the drain would have greater utility as being farmed as one larger continuous parcel, as opposed to requiring the 12-hectare portion of land along the north side of the drain to remain with a separate parcel to the south, instead of maintaining a lot area of 40 hectares, which is required in the current A3 zoning. And so the proposed lots would be of a size that is consistent with numerous other farm parcels in the area, and both the severed and retained lots would continue to be used for agricultural purposes, specifically field crop production, as well as continued use of the existing dairy operation. It is known that the proposed retained parcel would meet the requirements of the A3 zone, and it's recommended that as a condition of consent approval, that the proposed severed parcel be rezoned to the A1, which is the general agricultural zone, to permit the proposed lot frontage and area. And severed parcel would be capable of meeting those requirements of the A1 zone that exists in the bylaw. It is known that portion of the subject lands are designated as a significant woodland. And typically the PPS would require or would not permit development and site alteration on adjacent lands to natural heritage features unless it's been demonstrated that there be no negative impacts to those features. However, given that the purpose of the proposed severance is to divide an agricultural lot and there are no new uses or no new buildings proposed, and the severance itself would not fragment the natural heritage feature, it's not anticipated that the proposed lot creation would have any impact on that natural heritage feature on the property. No comments have been received from agencies or public at the time of the submission of this report. And so staff are recommending that the application be supported and the recommended conditions be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration. That concludes my presentation. We have to take questions from members of council.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, through to Mr. Steele. I heard you say it's still an existing dairy operation, but under 18, is there any barns within capable use for livestock? Both boxes are checked no. So is it still an existing dairy operation or is it shutting down? But I just don't know why they're both checked no.
Through your worship, it's my understanding based on information from the application that it is an existing dairy operation. I do believe both the applicant or the owner and applicant are here as well tonight. Perhaps they can provide any confirmation to the contrary.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. My name, through your worship, my name's Stuart Finlater. I'm representing Mr. Bennett on this application. And yes, that dairy operation is still in existence and will continue to be in existence. And I see what you're saying on number 18. So it is now used for a livestock operation and will continue to be used as such on the southern property.
Okay, so we'll have to have an MDS done on the severed parcel?
I refer that to Mr. Steele, but there's no new structure or operation being proposed. This is an existing operation, so I don't believe that would be necessary.
I'm just looking at point B. It said if there's anything within 750 meters, MDS has to be required. I'm just asking the question. Thank you.
Did you want to come? CO Bedridge or CO Bedridge?
Yes, and through your worship, I'm looking at Mr. Steele as well, but be it my understanding that the severances don't require MDS calculations. But if there's to be a new dwelling established on the remnant or the vacant property, that's when MDS is triggered to make sure it's not too close, because that property is being separated from the agricultural or the livestock operation.
Yes, that would in fact be the case. If there was a new residential building being proposed on the other parcel, it would have to meet the required MTS from that existing livestock operation.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the resolution. Clerk Adams.
The report number DS 22-62 entitled Application for Consent to Sever Blake Bennett and Brenda Lee Coleman be received, and that the application for consent to sever of Blake Bennett and Brenda Lee Coleman relating to the property located at Concession 7, Part Lot 13, and known municipally as 15217 Imperial Road be supported for the reasons set out in this report, and that this report and the recommended conditions be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Wilson, Counselor Lewis, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Steele. Have a good evening for real this time.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next, we do have a verbal report from CO Bedridge regarding the Public Works recruitment process. Director Sweetland, we know you're still here, but it's a critical position. Go ahead, Adam.
So thank you, Your Worship. As most of council will be aware, we do have a human resources policy with regards to recruitment, specifically the recruitment of directors. That entails a recruitment committee be established comprised of the CAO, the human resources manager, Sue Lowen, the mayor, the deputy mayor, and then a third member of council. So seeking direction, We haven't scheduled interviews yet, but it's very likely that we have received candidates. We could schedule interviews prior to our next council meeting. So that's the need to establish a third member of council to a recruitment committee for this position. So seeking direction from council.
Any members of council wishing and available to participate in the recruitment process?
When would such interviews or a committee meet?
Comments?
Yes, such would be during business hours. So they typically start maybe as early as 10 a.m., could be 9 a.m., but and conclude around 3:30 type of thing, depending on the number of candidates. We would typically do one candidate an hour. So and whether we do 4. So it could take most of the morning, or we could take a couple in the morning and a couple in the afternoon. So it would take most of the day, but it would occur during business hours.
Good, so I will happy to entertain that resolution, and it sounds like we'll have to figure out the logistics. Anyway, there have been exceptions. Sometimes the interviews have taken place in the evening because the candidate was not available during the day. So I guess the actual details to be determined. So do you have a resolution? Okay, great.
That the verbal report of the CAO pertaining to the scheduled recruitment for the position of Director of Public Works be received, and that Counselor Cerna be appointed to sit with the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Chief Administrative Officer, and the HR Manager to form the recruitment committee for the hiring of a new Director of Public Works.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis, Counselor Leach, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we have reports of committees and outside boards. We receive them as one, or do we have a resolution for each? Just one. Any question or comments on any of the reports from outside boards? Self-explanatory. We'll proceed with the resolution.
That the following reports of committee and outside boards be noted and filed: the Long Point Region Conservation Authority minutes of April 5th, Elmer Malahide Museum and Archives annual 2022 report, and the East Elgin Community Complex Board of Governance Review Committee minutes of May 1st, 2023.
Mover and seconder, Counselor Cerna. Counselor Leach, all in favor? Carried. Next, we have correspondence. There are 11 items. Any comments? Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would do number 7, County of Prince Edward release the proposed new provincial planning statement 2023, and I plan to speak to that as soon as we're out of here. Thank you.
During other business, you mean? Okay. Okay. So we'll come back to provincial planning statement as a separate item. Any other comments? If not, the resolution.
That correspondence item number 7 be supported, and that the remaining correspondence items be noted and filed.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna. Deputy Mayor Widner, all in favor? Carried. Other business. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do have some council updates from County Council. The first one we had kind of interesting. I had no idea the St. Thomas Hospital and how busy they are. Yeah, they fixed you anyway. Yeah. Like last year, there were 750 babies born, that's pretty amazing. They're right up there for wait times. They actually said they were lower than most hospitals for their wait times. So they've got some new equipment in there for chemotherapy and new labs, new MRI machines. It's full service hospital. Now, the problem they're running into, the main part of the hospital is 75 years old. I didn't realize that, but it's 75, so it's really limiting some of the things they can do, but I think their size is limited on the parcel they're on. They may be looking at doing it off campus or something like that, so. Anyway, it was very interesting. I wasn't aware of some of that, so. And another thing they had, there was gonna be a proclamation day for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day on June 15th. They're gonna raise a flag at the county. And first of all, I didn't realize, I don't know many people that get elder abuse. Then I thought of Jack Dykeshorn. Well, there was a blatant case of elder abuse, so. Yeah, I think we should, all think about that on that day and think about Jack and the injuries he's sustained. Now, the big one that I want to speak to is the provincial policy statement was mentioned at the county. And actually, Donna Lund sent out a couple of really good videos about it that have been on the Land Trust Association and some policy advisors. I don't think anybody realizes, and I certainly didn't, the new powers that are going to be pushed by the province. They are going to do whatever they want to do, and the municipality will have no say. It's going to be like this plant up here. They're just going to move in and do whatever they want to do. And there's no input. Municipalities will lose their control over the lots. There's going to be 3 lots allowed per farm, but any agricultural property will still get lots 2. Doesn't matter what class of land it is either. I thought we were told it was going to be less land. No, it can be class 1 land. As long as there's a road, it appears services aren't required. There was a map sent out in the information, like Huron and Middlesex have the potential for 24,000 lots and 21,000 lots. At least somebody drew a map, counted up all the farms. That's huge. That's a lot of farmland to lose. And matter of fact, Norfolk estimates they could lose 10% of their farmland with people putting in these lots. So not saying every farmer is going to sell them off, but there is the potential there and it could be huge. With council permission, I'd like to see Mr. Flack come to our council and we could ask him how they explain this. Because to me, farmland was supposed to be so protected and now they don't care. They're really having a war here with our land. I'd like to voice our opposition to that. There's a waiting period and I'd like to see us do that. I believe the county is going to do that too, but I think everybody got the link, I believe. It's quite lengthy, but it's very interesting to watch it and it's quite disheartening what the province is doing. It's like they don't care about farms anymore. And it used to be a big deal. Thank you. Sure.
The old saying used to be, there's no farming like lot farming. You make a hell of a lot more money selling land that way than you ever will. Corn, beans, tobacco, whatever. So that's the problem. And it fulfills their goal of building all these houses. And that.
So indeed, the county council directed staff to issue their submission to the registry. I think it's first week of June. There is a deadline by June 6th or something. Looking at staff, our CEO, is that something you've looked at the proposed changes as well? I think there are a significant potential impact, not only for the county, but for Malahide specific. Is that something we could do as well, where we could voice our concerns and submit a response?
Yes, through you, your worship. I am aware our planning consultant hasn't been tasked with providing comments, but I am certainly aware of the proposed changes. If council is desirous of having myself send comments on behalf of council that would reflect the county's concerns, and I trust them to be involved with the loss of prime agricultural land and maybe the loose management of settlement areas, that is something that can be achieved.
Council would be in favor of that. So should we maybe do a resolution for that, please?
That the CAO be directed to provide comments on behalf of the Township Council to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, opposing its proposed policies for an integrated province-wide land use planning policy document, and that the comments sent to the province reflect the comments being sent by Elgin County Council and include Township Council's concerns relating to the lack of protection of prime agricultural lands and the loosening of land protection policies for settlement areas.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Lewis, Councillor Leach, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Other business, Counselor Cerna.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yesterday, I believe it was, we had another accident on Imperial Road and Ron McNeil line. I think that's the fourth or fifth one we've had there since January. And I think Malahide Township should pressure or at least request the County of Elgin that we've got to do something with that intersection. Roundabout is probably the only answer we can do there. So I would like to see that instituted as quick as possible and get some results there. The other thing I noticed last night on the news is the City of London is instituting a lot of a photo radar. They're doubling it in some places up there. And I think with half the problems we have here in Malahide Township with accidents and things like that is speeding. And I would like to investigate that because the last time I suggested it, cost was an issue, but it can't be that bad if London is doubling up on their photo radar situation. So I'd like staff to, or I'd like the council to instruct staff to look into it. And the other thing is, if we're gonna go forward with it and spend that kind of money, we should get the revenue from it, not split it with every other municipality in Ogden County. If we're spending the money on it, we should get the revenue from it. That's my suggestion. Okay, thank you.
Now, so I recall there was a report produced by staff. So perhaps the first step would be if there's any new, if there's no new information and nothing significant has changed since the last report from staff, I would hesitate to just repeat the same work. We could start with a letter to the county to get an update. Believe we've been told before that there is the transportation master plan that is supposed to be released soon. But perhaps we could get, and the recommendations for specific intersections, I believe were supposed to be part of the transportation master plan. So perhaps we could request a more specific, more imminent update. We could start with that. Right. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did speak to the warden after this accident. I'm going to bring it up on Tuesday, just to make sure we're in the queue, make sure we're still, because this isn't getting any better. And he's on board with it because we're having way too many crashes, and we had a bad crash last night at Putnam and Lyons, and it was 2 transport trucks in broad daylight. So thank you.
Okay, so is it the wish, Councillor Glinski?
Madam Mayor, seems to me when we mentioned this Ron McNeil and Imperial Road before, the price tag seemed to be the issue that everybody seemed to be hanging their hat on. Have they not driven around St. Thomas recently? Fairview seems to have a roundabout on every almost on every corner. I'm not saying that we need one on every corner, but we sure the heck need one on Ron McNeil line and Imperial Road. And if St. Thomas and area, or maybe even the county might have something to do with some of those roundabouts. If we can afford to have roundabouts there, we should be able to afford to have roundabouts here when we've been suggesting that something be done for not just this year or last year, but for tens of years. And it's just ridiculous that the county seems not to be interested in doing something. I think they should have moved ahead and done something by now. And if not, they should do it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, is it sufficient to bring it up at county council meeting on Tuesday, or do you also wish a formal request from Malahide Council?
We could do the formal request. I am going to bring it up. But like I said, I just speak to the warden. One concern I have with all this new development going on, that's going to be a lot busier for it. So would the province or the feds kick in some dough too? They've got lots of money to throw at everything else, and they're going to have to upgrade a lot of the roads, and they are upgrading a lot of the roads. So maybe that could be part of that deal too, but I am going to bring it up and make sure it's still in the queue anyway. Thank you.
Clerk Adams, do you have a resolution to, for that correspondence to county?
That Malahide Township Council requests that the County of Elgin Council provide a status update on the intersection of Ron McNeil Line and Imperial Road.
Thank you. Mover and seconder. Counselor Leach, Counselor Glinski, all in favor? It's carried. For photo radar, for now, maybe I'll ask staff to just look at if there's any new information since the last report. Okay. Other business. Counselor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. We were both at the meeting in East Elgin earlier on this week. It was great to see a completely full library, nowhere to sit. We were on the stairs, so that's much better than the half dozen people or so that showed up last time. So one of the things that, you know, a lot of the same things I've already rehashed. I'm not going to rehash everything here again. I'm glad that people are up to speed with what's happening and people are getting sort of, you know, the concern is out there. Glad to see it. I understand Elmer has sent a resolution on Thames Valley. I think that we should do the same. And that was one of my big concerns, and that's why I sent out the email before the meeting, just seeing if Thames Valley has asked Malahide Township about anything. And it seems like they haven't. So when the counselor that represents Belmont's ward from Central Elgin showed up and had the exact same thing to say, it seems that even though there's supposed to be all this supposed outreach and communication, they haven't had any outreach or communication to the actual affected municipalities. And if they won't speak to the elected officials from the affected municipalities, why not? I find it fairly disturbing. It's something that I think that they definitely need to improve upon, and something that we should encourage them to improve upon. Thank you.
So would Counselor Cerna?
I have a question for Counselor Wilson. Do they have the same people in place now that they had when they were trying to kibosh Springfield Public School?
It apparently there has been quite a turnover. I'm not sure if the MO has changed, however.
Because nothing else, when I was on council, when they were dealing with Springfield School, the guy that was in charge of the numbers, I don't know what his name was. If I didn't learn anything else, I learned the saying that figures don't lie, but liars figure. And he did exactly that. So you got to be on your toes. That's all I can say.
So based on the, as Counselor Wilson mentioned, I attended the meeting as well, and And the concern is legitimate in terms of the impact of the changes in boundaries, not so much on a potential school closure. I think what the message that's clear is if attendance is lower, it affects programming. If programming is affected, it affects recruitment of teachers, it affects accessibility it affects all of our families, it affects the employers in the area. So there is a legitimate domino effect that is concerning for a municipality. So I would agree if it is council's wish that we do send our own correspondence to the trustees expressing our concern on the proposed changes, and perhaps also include a comment on our wish to see a strengthened proactive communication when changes are being proposed. Councillor Wilson?
I would like it to be sent to the planning department as well, because if they're getting their numbers from somewhere, and if it isn't from anyone in our municipality, then they supposedly are talking to their planning departments. I'm not sure where they're getting their info from, if it's not from the people that have the information.
So strengthen two-way communication, I think would be our suggestion. I'm sure you got all that, right? Clerk Adams, do you have are there any, it sounds like there's consensus on that. Do you have something to propose?
That council direct the mayor to send correspondence on behalf of council to the Thames Valley District School Board, including the Thames Valley District School Board Planning Department and the 12 trustees expressing concerns regarding the proposed school boundary adjustments.
We'll make sure it gets to each trustee. Mover and seconder? Counselor Wilson, Counselor Leach, all in favor? Carried. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Thank you, Mayor. This school thing just tipped me off to something I've been working on, and it's been in the news the last couple of weeks. I was put on the community policing board here, and that was good. There was lots of information. We had an OPP officer attend the meeting, and I asked him how it was going with the schools. And I was shocked. He said, "We're not allowed in the schools anymore." Yeah, they're not allowed in the schools. They were kicked out. So at the conference in Toronto, I got to meet Mr. Lucky. And I did talk to him about it. He was aware, said they were working on it. So I got a hold of some of the trustees, and they don't all reply to the emails, I'll tell you that. But the one did, Mr. Smith, he was very good about it. And I ended up getting an official board response. And it said, yeah, they're not allowed in. But I guess as of last week, Lucky and the province said, no, you get them back in there. This is nonsense, and get them back in. And I think Thames Valley was ordered to do it too. So there was 2 other boards plus Thames Valley. So glad to see it. The police aren't there to scare kids. They're there to educate and to do a good job. So thank you.
Build relationship. I do want to loop back. We have a director of emergency services. We're not able to attend their last meeting, but we did want to hear a little bit more about our contribution to the Aylmer downtown fire. I wanted to hear how we did, if we're able to contribute. Yes.
Sure, Your Worship. The fire in March there was probably a significant event for the town of Aylmer, and I think without the help of the Malahide firefighters and the other municipalities as well, that probably would have turned into something a lot more significant for the town. A lot of business and a lot of infrastructure in that area. Our firefighters, we had about 44 of our firefighters there on scene for pretty well the whole night, and into the next day for cleanup and stuff as well. It was probably gonna be a very large dollar loss and time consuming loss for the town of Aylmer. So I think with their help, I think it helped keep the one building and the building, adjacent buildings beside it were probably saved from the efforts of the Mutual Aid Association for the county. So I think that was really good. We had the township here also had another house fire. We were aiding the same night. So Bayham had a house fire on Springer Hill which is actually just one house into Bayham. So the North Station was doing that at the same time when the fire first started, and then it came after that and did a whole night full of firefighting and went to Elmer to help out as well. So all the firefighters throughout the township spread the work out and made sure our coverage is still adequate in the township as well during the whole time, and it was really well done. So
Thank you. Well, pass on our appreciation on, everybody being ready and well-trained and ready to step in action. Any other business? Oh, the bylaw for on other business, yes, the request for the firefighter, from the firefighter association, the requests for the portion of the pier, almost missed it again, for the fireworks display. Were there any questions or concerns about that? Yeah, we're great to see that returning. It's a nice event. So we'll do the resolution.
That Malahide Volunteer Firefighter Association be granted permission to utilize a portion of the pier in Port Bruce for the purpose of a fireworks display on Sunday, May 21st, rain date Monday, May 22nd, subject to providing the township with proof of event liability insurance, naming the township of Malahide as an additional insured.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Cerna, Counselor Glinski, all in favor? Carried. So we can move to bylaws. Or we just have the confirmatory bylaw, do we? So the resolution for a confirmatory bylaw?
That bylaw number 23-42 being a confirmatory bylaw be given first, second, third reading and properly signed and sealed.
Mover and seconder, Counselor Cerna, Counselor Wilson, all in favor? Carried. And adjournment.
That council adjourn its meeting at 9:36 PM to meet again on June 1st at 7:30 PM.
Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Whitner, Counselor Glinski, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.